CosmicRadio.TV. Welcome to Jump Point, where we'll talk the gamut of gaming topics. I'm your host, Roberto Vegas, joined by
Bryce Castillo.
And we have a guest today.
Hello.
We're joined by cinematography's own Brandt Hughes.
That's me.
What's going on in the world in cinema? Tell me what's going on in the world of cinema. I'm going to put you on the spot.
I'm glad you asked, Bryce.
Yeah.
Frames.
Do they still have frames?
Sometimes.
Oh, great.
Yeah. It's really exciting.
Awesome. I'm excited. I love frames.
Movies.
I would love to hear you have to explain, like, oh yeah, dude, there's been such innovation. You know what? We're no longer going 24 frames. We're going 26 now.
23.97. Thank you very much, Roberto.
Well, 24 point something if you're PAL.
Who's PAL?
No one.
Australia.
PAL.
Yeah, they don't count. I'm here to burn all your bridges. Hi, this is Jump Point.
I think we burned those a long time ago. Well, today we brought you in because of the fact we're going to be talking about Gods Will Be Watching.
Yeah, that's a fact.
Yeah. Gods Will Be Watching is a PC game from Deconstruct Team.
Yes.
It's a Spanish. I think it's made in Spain.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it is a sort of narrative crisis management sim.
Yeah.
Game.
Resource management is what I would call it. But yeah, there are definitely crises in there.
You can get it on Steam. You can get it on OS 10. Is it on Linux? Did you see if it's?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it covers the whole spectrum of Steam supported software.
Right.
I think this is also crowdfunded originally, correct? Because I saw in the
think
credits
so,
some
yes.
Indiegogo stuff mentioned.
Yeah. And it was also based off of a Flash game, which was Chapter 3.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
The Gods Will Be Watching chapter was actually a Flash game that inspired, I guess, the crowdfunding campaign.
I mean, that makes sense for sure, because it did feel like it had a lot of those. I mean, obviously, it's like sort of point-and-click adventure game, and I say that in a very broad sense, but you're not doing a lot of movement in the game. You're sort of just kind of clicking things around.
There's not really adventure.
Yeah,
Right.
but it's still a point. But it feels like that could have been a Flash game, at least in that regard.
Yeah, especially just yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So
first off, the regular disclaimer: if you've never seen Jump Point, this is a book club type discussion show. We're going to openly talk about spoilery bits of the game. So go play the game, and then come back, and then listen, and then let us know what you think. It's a spoiler zone. It's a spoiler kingdom.
It is.
Huh.
Well, because this is the kind of game I don't think you could really talk about well without certain knowledge of spoilers in it, without knowing the motions of the game.
Yeah. So that's your fair warning. Peace.
So let's kind of go around. I'm curious, what did you end up thinking about the game overall, Brandt?
I thought it was great. I really loved it. I went into it, I guess I have a type. I mean, it plays into a lot of the stuff that I like. It's kind of sci-fi. It's kind of weird existentialist. It's sort of serious, but it has kind of interesting characters, and that's just that operates in my MO. And I thought it was really interesting. You say you have a minimalist point and shoot or point and click resource management game, and on paper that doesn't sound appealing, really at all. I don't think.
No, it doesn't.
But
that's like saying playing a pen and paper SimCity.
right.
It doesn't sound fun.
That's sort of what it like for me. The draw was going into. I thought it was gonna be like a point and click adventure game. I'd move around, combine items, things like that. But once you get into the first sort of challenge, if you will, it's none of that. You're
right.
just you're simply clicking yourself and sort of saying, here's the action I want to perform. Yeah. You're you're giving in later chapters you're giving water to people and things like that. It's not so much of you're walking around and kind of figuring things out. It's
Right.
Yeah. How did you guys feel about the narrative framing of sort of going through these different phases of emergencies and just new higher and higher antes of having to save the world. Like, did that feel fake? Like, did it feel fake or like contrived?
For me, it didn't. I mean, especially I'll say some of them maybe didn't work out as well as I figured they would have. Like the first mission, the first chapter, I thought was definitely like that. This is a kind of a stressful moment. In fact, that was the one that made me kick down the difficulty. Because I was managing like 3 separate things, like, keeping prisoners, at bay, making sure the guards aren't breaking down the doors, and make sure the hacking is going fine. Like, that became a little stressful for me to kind of have all those things together. But everything else pretty much kind of worked out, I think. I mean, I don't think it felt fake, but I think by having those limited resources, it did feel that there was a time limit on things.
Yeah.
Like I felt that there was at least some kind of impending doom kind of clock. What about you?
Yeah, I thought it was great, because this game really, it really hinges on the mechanics of the game, in a big way, and I thought they did a really great job of contextualizing the mechanics in a very narrative form. So it put you in these situations, and it gave you a reason to be doing the things that you're doing. And I thought it was really interesting because, you go into it a bit, and then a few chapters in, you understand the format of the game, and you say, okay, we're about to come up to a situation, and I know there's going to be some things that I have to balance and things that I have to pay attention to, and how they present these things, and then you kind of have to sort of trial and error your way through, like, okay, so if I choose this action, it affects these things in this way.
Yeah.
I think they did a really good job of presenting those in interesting ways.
Well, because a lot of the challenges are kind of randomized, like in a certain. I mean, there's certain like.
There are
points that
random
happen.
elements.
They're random elements, is what
Sure.
you suggest, because it's sort of not typical in a point-and-click kind of game. There's usually not a random sort of chance if you hit X, Y, and Z at the same time, you're going to get the solution. Whereas, if you don't do it here, or you push too hard here, or do something else, things will go, haywire.
Sure. Okay. I guess I brought that up because I do agree mostly that the scenarios felt natural, though I would say chapter 6, the setup for chapter 6, where you are getting the access codes on the ship.
Right.
I don't know. I thought that was maybe the weakest narrative element of the game, of like, now you have to fucking get these codes out of people, and I didn't think that the context surrounding it was as good as any of the other parts of the game, if that makes sense. I mean, it wasn't. I think maybe because it came after the desert chapter, which eventually you sort of figure out is a flashback.
Yeah.
You kind of lose the momentum of like, you are on your death march to this spaceship and to save this whole 4 billion people. I think a mixture of losing that momentum and just kind of not knowing or really caring about most of the scientists in that room felt more like a reason of having one last puzzle than the next logical conclusion.
Well, because 5 was such it is like the pivotal moment of the narrative. It is the point where you realize, like, you don't, because when you get to that point in the desert, you don't know if it's a flashback. Like I was sort of playing the game, and I kind of took a break there, came back, and I think I was talking with you about it, Brandt, in some portion where I was saying, I don't know if this is like a past thing or I crashed or something like that, because I'm in that scene and I see I think it was Jack was the other guy there, and I was like, well, I see Jack there, and I think that's the same guy. Maybe this is a dream sequence and everything else, and so at that point in the game, I was very disoriented, and then I realized as you get to the end, it's completely flashback and things like that. it was such a like, oh crap, I didn't even, I've looped back here, and it became the very much like that is the begin point of your character, your Abraham sort of story, and where Abraham is actually born.
Yeah.
Because even at the very end, you loop back there no matter what. So I think it's hard to follow up that point. I think you're absolutely right that whole, get the codes and stuff like that just felt like almost a lead up to just have the antidote by chapter 7.
And I wouldn't, I didn't feel like it was that big of a problem, but I think what might have helped you a little bit is if in chapter six, yeah. If in that chapter, the limiting factor of that, the thing that's trying to put the pressure on is every action that happens. Not only are you losing oxygen or whatever, with the impending doom, but you have the death counter, right? So you're trying to get through it as quickly as possible to save as many people as possible. And I think that big death counter was, or that life counter, I guess, was. It's kind of a nebulous concept, right? You don't really have a ton of context for, there's actually 4 billion people, and every minute, hundreds of thousands of them are dying. It's just kind of this number. So I think if there was some way that they could have made that a little bit more real, I think that would have
because unlike
helped.
the oxygen, it's not affected by any of your actions.
Right.
It is just this kind of counter that doesn't go by time.
Well, even the counter itself, how they brought it in was kind of weird. Like, you were given the AI, and it was like, oh, by the way, boss, I'm here. I'm going to overlay something only you can see, so you're aware of all these different variables. Stuff like it felt kind of almost pushed that would have been there.
Yeah.
It is. It was like it makes sense, but it's just like, oh.
I will say though, having that info screen was way more helpful than having to ask for it every time.
Right.
Oh, for sure. I will say it was totally helpful, especially when it came to persuading people and seeing what you've done. And that for me, because during that portion, after I persuaded somebody, I let them sort of go, sort of freeze, kind of, send the message, if you cooperate, I'm going to, treat you right.
Can we talk about chapter 7 for a minute?
Sure.
Because chapter 7 is a total reversal of the gameplay mechanics. And its main purpose is to push the idea of, okay, you are this entity that is looping through time over and over again.
Right.
But the whole gameplay changes, and suddenly it is like a call and response instead of like any sort of management element. How did you guys feel about that change?
I thought it was cool. I thought it was I thought it was awesome because they have to. So they did a really interesting thing with every time you reach a fail state, it flashes back through all of the other chapters really quickly.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really cool way to convey that, he actually died, but then he started over and experienced all of it again, and now he's back up to this point yet once more.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really cool, interesting, fascinating way to give a lot of context for the story in a very brief amount of time. In order for them to be able to iterate on that enough, you have to have, I would say, more failure states in a quicker succession than they had through any of the other chapters, which they definitely did with this, not having you go through a 30-minute scenario and then possibly fail.
Right.
And so I thought that was a really clever way of approaching that, and also just because it was a nice change of pace.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. That's sort of what I enjoyed about it. It was a very much a nice change of pace. Like, I enjoyed the fact that it kind of gave, because like the one thing I really had problems with the game was sort of its almost unforgiving checkpointing system. I understand why it does it. Like, I get the idea of you fail, but I hated like the one that got me so angry in terms of failing all the time was chapter 5, because I didn't realize until about halfway through that I could send out like a scout to explore and things like that. So I kept hitting like a random enemy base.
Yeah.
And just like, oh, sorry, boss, you're done. And it's just like, son of a bitch. I just got to guess because it always reset and do its own challenge.
Got to pay attention, Roberto.
I do. And then that makes sense. But with this one, which is chapter 7, I enjoyed that it made sense of like, oh, cool. It's helped me kind of learn this stuff. It's not saying you died and I have to sort of, press right click to it just kind of loops back. And I like that sort of, because of it didn't give me enough time to comprehend a failure. It worked out better for me, I think.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, I definitely I like what it is, and I do like the narrative elements of it, contextualizing his sort of looping.
Right.
I don't know. It's just weird. I don't hate it. I don't even dislike it. But it was such a sudden shift.
Yeah.
Though I will say, okay, so you played it on original.
Hell yeah, I did.
Yeah, you play. Yeah.
And so chapter 7, you played it on original. How long is that chapter 7 on original mode? Because like we've got my footage here, and it's only maybe a couple of minutes because I already knew how to beat it. But is it much longer? Is it like a really long experience, that last chapter? Because when you play the other ones, you can sort of breeze through them pretty quickly if you know what you're doing. But I kind of wanted to know what that dichotomy is between, not dichotomy, but whatever the comparison is between original and, say, narrative.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't play both modes, so I can't speak directly to that. But the last chapter, chapter 7, it took me 40 minutes to beat, something like that.
Okay.
So not super long, but I mean a little bit longer than that. And a lot of that is sitting there figuring out
what each of the tells are.
Yeah, these are the tells. This is what works with what.
Okay.
But
that's significantly shorter than the other chapters that you played too.
Yeah, totally. Because some chapters were an hour, 2 hours, even 3 hours long. I think chapter 4 or 5 or something was like 3 hours long for me.
With the last chapter, once you've documented the tells, that's it. Like once you've seen, the shaking of the blue, the red, and the yellow, and all the other kind of tells in between, and you sort of wrote them down what to do. It really, you can just speed on through, and that's sort of the idea behind it, because you keep hearing him say like, I've read I can read your moves. I know exactly how this is going to play out because I've done it so many times.
Okay.
Well, because I can say at least looking, because when I played the first mission, I played originally at original, and then I played it in narrative. And ultimately, what happens in narrative, a lot of things that would have taken longer in original just speed up quicker. Or you get more resources, like in narrative in the desert, I assume you get more water and
yeah, you find
clips.
a lot more resources.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I finished chapter was that 5 with like 40 rations of water.
Yeah, same here. I finished it with a ton. After I learned how it all worked out and everything else, it was just I breezed on through it.
You just have like a traveling kiddie pool that you
quite literally
swim through the desert with.
I had like 40 or 50 rations of water, and it never felt that. But so I assume that that's how it works out for some of the chapters, that you just have way more diminished resources and sort of adds attention of, do you kill somebody, do you not kill somebody, or things like that.
I think one of the interesting things that the game teaches you, or maybe tries to teach you, is like to use all of your resources. Right, because you're kind of used to, like, when I think of resource management, I can't help but think of like SimCity and like resourcing money, because you kind of want to have a pad in case something happens,
right?
But you want to spend so you can get the dividends of building out sooner. Where like with the desert chapter, I kind of wanted to avoid all the enemy bases, but you have the people to do it, you have the ammo, you have explosives, like you should use it while you have it.
Yeah.
And I kind of didn't get that concept until sort of later in the game, and I wonder if that's something that is a little bit of a letdown in the storytelling, or at least the teaching elements of the game.
For me, the one that I tripped up, because like by the time I got to that chapter, I was okay, kind of breezing through resources, things like that. The one that sort of forced me to think in that mindset that really did it was during the it's after you basically the Medusa virus has been kind of captured and they leave you on that planet to kind of die. It's when you're waiting for your rescue to come in. Like that's the
chapter
one.
4.
Chapter 4.
Right.
That's the one that like I kept like conserving things and having to do it, because mainly for that one, the big even in narrative mode, the big resource you have to really manage is time. Because no one seems to get sick if you feed them too much raw meat. At least in narrative mode, I don't know if it's in original light if originally do that.
I only had one person get sick.
Okay.
But I did plenty of cooking, so.
Okay. Yeah, so I didn't have anyone get sick or have anyone leave. But I'd always run out of time to get things like an inspirational speech done so that, you keep these guys sane. But that was the one that made me realize, oh, okay, so I'll just do this, make sure I have enough time for a speech if people look a bit crazy, and then go from there. Because by about chapter 5, I was like, yeah, give everyone water, or yeah, everyone rest when you can find a rest. It's just a matter of timing things like, when the sandstorm hit, trying to find shelter in time.
Yeah. I mean, every chapter has its own rhythm and groove, and it's all about just finding that, and then once you get into there, it's kind of just easy mode. But
what else is there to talk about?
Marvin. Let's talk about Marvin.
Oh my gosh, Marvin is so great.
Marvin is the best. I have so much respect for the way they implemented Marvin, because Marvin is awesome. You sometimes you bring in dogs, and dogs are an easy catch to have you emotionally attached to people or
and
something.
it's easy tears, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't happen. It's so great.
Yeah. And actually, it's even better than just it not happening. They give you Marvin as a tool that you can choose to use or not use. So, you go to chapter 3 where you're trying to research a cure for the Medusa virus, and everybody has their own functions, and Marvin has 2 functions. He can either dig, which he doesn't dig a lot. He digs the least of anybody, but, it's a little bit of add-on that you can utilize for him.
Yeah.
Or you can inject him with the Medusa virus cure that you've developed, and it'll take longer than anybody else because, he's the lightest. But if he dies, then, you're not missing out on anything. He doesn't have any vital element. So they just kind of toss him out there as a thing where it's like, if you want to, you can use Marvin for your own nefarious purposes. Yeah. But I'm just like, I love Marvin, and out of all these people, Marvin is the one that I want least hurt. So I decided not to use Marvin through like most of the game, just to save him.
What I like about how they used Marvin, especially, like my favorite point of him as a character was actually when he's first introduced, sort of there at like outside the cave. It's sort of before the chapter kicks off. And I liked how you could extend the conversation between you and that by just playing catch with the dog, by just playing fetch and saying a good boy. And because of that, you started learning more about these 2 characters between Jack and Abraham and how their dynamic works out. And I thought that was a really nice touch with that.
Yeah. I probably played fetch for like 30 minutes.
Yeah, well, no, I did too. I did too, just because I'm like, you're assisting me in getting this like actual interesting dialogue going, because it's just what it would normally have been a cutscene in a game. I like the fact that it gave you the ability to kind of, the simple little mechanic of playing fetch, but because of that, you're starting to get a lot more story of these 2 characters. Now, the one thing we didn't really talk about, I'm curious what your opinion is, because this game also does the usual, after you make a choice, you had to see what everyone else's choice was that's ever played the game. What did you guys think of those elements? I've always been on the fence with those things. I mean, I like it, but it almost sometimes ruins it for me, because I'm like, I know what choices I made, and I don't like to know that there's other choices I could have made.
Well, I think what's nice about it is that they weren't moral choices.
That's true.
Which is something you see in like fucking Infamous or
like a Telltale game.
Like a Telltale game, right? Where it's like 60% of the people chose the good side and 40% chose the bad side. It's like, it's really more an evaluation of how you played compared to other people, because it's so open-ended. Yeah. Which is, it's a nice little addition. I kind of, sometimes it was hard to decipher what some of them were trying to tell me based on what other people did, but it's a nice addition.
I want to go ahead and say your opinion is dumb on this one. But that's okay. You can
because like
you
some
can do
of the
that.
choices were like one of the ones that I didn't quite understand. Like it would almost get me to the point of like, I think the one that really cemented like this seems silly was it was on chapter 5 was the end, and it was what happened with the original Sergeant Abraham, whether he killed himself or you killed him. And it was more like, because during that chapter I didn't know oh, he's gonna die. Like, and that was what was supposed to happen. That he was supposed to die. But when I got to the end, I still didn't know. Like, I thought I did something wrong with him killing himself.
Oh, okay.
And then when we get to the end of the chapter, it's like, oh, okay, so he's gonna have to die anyways. And it was like a really weird thing of like, I could just killed him and it would have been done with it. Like,
Although they do telegraph that pretty heavily at the beginning of that chapter. He's like, fucking, I'm
take me out,
weighing
dude.
you guys down.
Yeah.
If there's a sacrifice me.
No,
And
for
he's
sure.
complaining and bitching like
I mean, for
every
sure-
step of the way.
I'm sure there's that kind of stuff, but my brain still goes, I know I gotta save him, that kind of thing.
Man, I was like 2 steps in and I was like, Jack, kill him.
wow.
It was awesome.
Really?
And then like half my guys walked away. They're like, dude, that's not cool.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And so I was like, dude, awesome. I have to give water to so many less people. Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting because
It was brutal too.
Yeah.
I almost didn't know when it happened. So when I had it, he had killed himself, I guess after a sandstorm.
Right.
We had found a shelter at a base camp and took shelter there. And it fades up from black and like you see his body on the ground and it's like, can I get some flavor text? Like I kind of almost am not, he killed himself?
Yeah.
It was a little weird. I think it might have just been a weird glitch or the way I don't know. Because
like,
I
the
almost
text-
lost the impression. It took me a second to
Yeah.
be like, oh, he did it to himself.
See, because me, the first time it happened was that I'd gotten to a shelter, I had rested, a sandstorm came, I then rested again, and then because I'd already done the first rest, we got the shot to the head, and people like, Sergeant, what the hell? And my character's like, well, I'm glad you guys got to sleep. I mean, death is like not getting enough rest is death in the desert or something like that. Then he went into the pull yourselves together, men. Sergeant Abraham, sacrificed himself for this team. Let's not make it. It was just like, okay. I don't think we needed to have it was a weird thing. So I kind of had a similar sort of glitch with that.
Yeah, for me, it was just like I could tell pretty early on that he was slowing down our travel time, and I knew that time was going to be a pretty heavy management when we're walking aimlessly in the desert.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you got to make tough calls.
Yeah.
And I made one.
Well, that is the game in general, is making tough calls. I mean, like I think I had. Even in narrative mode, I'd push it a bit too hard and ended up getting Jack ripped apart in half.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if any of you guys ended up getting him ripped apart or not.
Yeah, I was not entirely convinced that you could get through pretty easily without getting him ripped apart because there's a lot less give in that specific scenario than the rest.
Yeah.
They're like
You only really get 2 or 3 pulls on the thing before he splits.
Because I didn't expect it to happen that quickly. When it happened, like, oh Jesus! I was like, well, I guess I don't have to worry about him anymore.
What's weird is in my first playthrough, which was on Original Light, he died. He died on the stretch board.
Right.
And so when you saw him in the rest of the chapters, he would do that weird ghosty thing. But when I played it again on Narrative Light, for whatever reason, or not Narrative Light, just Narrative, for whatever reason, when I came to that scene, I was able to make it through without him dying on that board. But then you get another scene where he gets his arm chopped off. And then I never really got the ghost thing because he didn't die in the rest of the scenes either, but he had a bionic arm. There's a really interesting attention to detail in little things like that, of like making it work for what you're playing, and still staying true to the looping element of the story.
Yeah, because I got the same thing too with the whole ghosty thing. I had almost thought for at that portion when it happened for me, because when he died, I was like, well, I guess he's gonna be dead forever, and that's whatever. But when he came back, I'm like, oh, he's alive? That's bizarre. And then he kind of did the ghost thing. Like, I almost thought this was part of like some illusion of some sort, or like that was gonna be like his like Tyler Durden, if you will, like this character that he just knows. But people addressed him and talked with him in there, so I don't know if it was.
Well, and that Tyler Durden feeling, I think, comes from because he's still around during that torture chapter after he dies, and he still talks with him. But Liam obviously can tell he's not around,
right?
So that's kind of a red herring, but it works because I thought Byrne was a robot. the whole way through. I thought he was a robot.
That's great.
I didn't think he was a robot.
That doesn't answer any of the questions.
No.
Of the game, but I thought he's a fucking robot.
I honestly
guess.
thought as we start progressing that it was for a portion of time I thought it was like an AI simulation. Like this is all like some weird simulated thing of like, well, in the worst case scenario, here's what you're gonna have to do and kind of live through that because it is a worst case scenario, the Medusa virus getting in the hands of terrorists, and they might just use it to kill an entire planet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was definitely a potential outcome, but it was I thought it was so interesting because obviously they had this conceit where Burden lives this life a billion times, and I thought it was really cool the way that they seeded those weird oddities to kind of clue you into the fact that something is going on. So you have Jack who is in ghost form, and then the next chapter he's back alive. And it's kind of unexplained, and then sometimes you have characters who do like this weird warbly glitch kind of move.
Yeah.
And also the way that all of the information on Sergeant Burton is classified, and you can't get any info on him, like his weight or
the fact that the
injections don't work.
That was the thing that tripped me up.
He doesn't need food
Yeah.
or water or anything like that.
That's why I thought he was a robot.
See, I thought it was something, but I didn't. I did that first, like, oh, maybe that did kind of come to mind, but I did think of like the AI simulation as things kind of went on. So that does lead us to kind of the logical thing. What do you guys think of the ending? Specifically, the fact that even after doing that, you still have to you still go through the loop again.
I mean, as far as nailing the point home, I think it works perfectly. Just like. We will confirm this for you. This is an endless cycle, regardless of how you choose.
Right.
Which is great. It's not complicated. It doesn't try to over exposition itself and be like, he's actually a Highlander, and so he's a space Highlander.
Can we have that be the next game? Nope. I want that to be the next game. Nothing more. I'm kidding.
But it was simple, and it let me figure it out, and it wasn't like, here you go, this is the answer. I don't know. What about you?
I thought it was really cool because so much of the story narrative element, the conceit, plays into the gameplay mechanics. So you have Burden, who's this weird immortal dude who lives a billion lives, and I felt like early on the reason that he doesn't have to manage himself and resources for himself is because he is the protagonist. He's the player character. You don't want the player character to die.
Right.
It's okay to have a failure state, but for whatever reason, they had a stylistic choice of just not having you have to worry about yourself. And then they ended up explaining that with who his character is. And similarly, the way that the game ends, the fact that it is forever looping is kind of like the game. People they're playing the game. Once the game's over, you can start the game back at the beginning again. Other people are playing the game, and they were playing from the beginning. And I thought that was just kind of an interesting take on that.
I did too. I think I actually enjoyed the fact that it worked in sort of the game mechanic into the narrative, where when you have choices and things like that, you always have to kind of explain, well, why, how does it you have these alternate choices and things like that. And I liked how it had that. No matter what you do, you're going to keep going back to this point in time. And I enjoyed that reveal a lot. That and I just enjoyed the way it ended. The whole, you can choose whether you release the virus or not, and ultimately it doesn't matter. You're gonna go back and loop again. Even he mentions that while he's fighting Liam, he's like, I have tried this a billion times, and the only thing that seems to progress it is if I fight you on it. But even then, it won't matter.
Yeah.
Did you guys choose to save Gactus 7?
Well, so that was what I was gonna say. Is like, are you Team Xenolifer or Team Everdesk?
I chose to save it because I hate having a whole bunch of lives destroyed.
Nerd.
But it sounds like you were cold hard bitch.
No, yeah, I saved Gactus 7. I definitely sat there and thought about it for like 20 minutes.
I didn't because at that point I realized this is probably doesn't like after the character had kind of come to the point of like I don't even care. Like, not because
Oh.
well, I'm saying, like, I'm saying I didn't
Jaded
care.
Roberto.
When I'm saying
Jesus.
that, like, Abraham as Sergeant Burden as a character was like at that point had already expressed how many times he had done this and how many times he had progressed this and how many times he'd gotten to this point where it's just like, well, you could choose to save or not. And from his point, yeah, I guess I'll save, but even him saying, like, his like last lines, no matter what you did, was like, enjoy the world, that you're living in, and just fading and throwing back and letting the void of space kind of take him in. I did, however, save it because, like I said, I don't like seeing tens of lives. But you, sir?
Sure. I think I did save them the first playthrough. I then played it again to see what it looks like. It's a little different if you.
Oh, what
choose to.
happens?
He pulls out the antidote and he hits a button on it and he just lets it float in front of Liam, and then he does the same jump back.
Okay, so I figured it'd be something like that.
But I think Xenolifer brings up an interesting, almost hypothetical question. Is like, if there is a subspecies, and this is totally not even about video games anymore. This is about
That's
sci-fi.
okay.
Like, if there is a subspecies, aliens,
Right.
that are in slavery, and you are, what they kept saying is all out of options. Like, do you kill billions of people to make a paradise for them? Like, it's just, I don't even know if there's an answer. Or
No, and then that's
if
why
you can
what
expect an answer,
what I honestly liked about that decision and what I liked about the story is that there was really no wrong side. Like, in other words, like, if you're a team's, yes, slavery sucks and everything else like that, but, you wouldn't want to kill 40 million, a whole planet of people.
Sure.
But, in other words, you could see sort of the logic on both the Xenolifers and the, Everdusk. You could see the logic on both sides. And because of that, it's really a shade of gray. And I always dig that about it, as stylistically.
Yeah, they do a really good job of contextualizing and explaining things and getting you to see both sides. So,
in a game of hard choices, hard calls, it is the hardest call.
It is, and I did enjoy that because it's very easy to make a game where you have the all right, the team you're on is the good team and the other team's a bad team, and you never really kind of address why it is that the other team's doing what they're doing. And, ultimately, when it comes to those sort of stories, everyone thinks they're the hero of their own story. Everyone thinks what they're doing is the right decision. There's no, like there's no evil bad boss kind of thing that's, just purely bad. And I enjoyed that it addressed that in the game because it's very rare that I see that addressed in a game where you have these sort of, what we call terrorists, eco-terrorists. From their point of view, they're freedom fighters.
Yeah. I just thought, I don't know, it was almost a little bit timely. Just questioning where you stop being protesters and when you start being terrorists, and who defines terrorists, and how you treat subcultures, second-class subcultures. Is that it? Anything else you guys?
Anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So what did you think about the art? We spoke a little bit about it previously. And you also mentioned, there's a nice attention to detail, which I like. I really enjoyed chapter 4. Yeah, chapter 4. And you see the twin moons, and each day the parallax kind of changes a bit. And stuff like that was really cool, and I just really liked the aesthetic. I think every chapter had an interesting, unique look to it that made it feel like a whole new environment, and it had a different feel to it. There was an awesome animation in chapter 1 where if you take one of the hostages and you put them in the break room, if they get relaxed enough, she'll twirl her hair.
Oh, really?
And at first I didn't really understand because it's pixelated and it's so low res, but then when I pieced it together, I was like, oh, that's like an impossible animation for, that little moment that I really enjoyed.
For me, this was, again, I've probably said it before and I'll say it again. I tend to love pixel animation in general and pixel art in general. It's I mean, for God's sakes, my logo's that. For me, I enjoyed the heck out of it, but because I've seen so many games, not just of recent years, but of even earlier years, utilize this kind of very minimalistic pixel work and do animations like that. That didn't have as much an impact on me. Not that I didn't think it was beautiful. I didn't think it was great. It's just those like little touches. Like, yeah, of course they're there. I've seen those hand motions and things like that in other games. I enjoyed it, but that I'm biased on this.
Sure.
It is no secret that I have apprehension towards pixel art.
Yeah, this is where we have our.
But I think mostly the art is really gorgeous. It really, the scenery, like the opening to chapter 2 where you can see the lake and you can see the horizon.
Yeah.
Just the whole scene. And even going into chapter 3, which is where you're actually at that lake, and like it really is gorgeously done. I do think that you can tell there are a couple of pieces where they've pixelated a raster type, like with the fire. It's all got a very processed look, as opposed to just hand done, I guess, which is a small complaint, because even in pixel art, that's a very tough thing. And I actually like, going back to talking about that gesture, I actually like the tactile abstraction of making it hard to read people's faces with the pixel art. When you are in chapter 3, which is when you're repairing the radio.
That's chapter 4.
Oh, okay. Sorry,
Yeah.
chapter 4. Yeah. Oh, right. I keep forgetting that chapter 2 is the torture scene.
Yes.
When you're in chapter 4, and that's what I meant earlier. If somebody gets sick with the Meduseed virus, you really have to they will stop doing their idle animation. But if you're not paying attention, you will totally miss it. That happened to me a couple times where someone had gotten sick with the virus. I ended the day and I wasn't able to feed them. And that was when I realized, oh, whoops, I let them get sick, and now I have to use an antidote.
See, for me, I enjoyed a lot of when it came to the animation, sort of during that scene, because I had a lot of people, because I play narrative mode, I had a lot of people sort of almost lose it. And I liked how they did the illustration, especially with, I guess, the female doctor, or Sarah, how she would just sort of rock back and forth, like she's about to completely break. And I enjoyed that was her, that's the signal to you that you got to start talking to these people, because they're just not as tough as you, because they haven't done this for this many years.
Right. It's not that those animations represent a number, because it's really easy to just have the numbers.
Yeah.
But they actually give you context of
exactly
it's getting too far.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I thought that was a super cool mechanic of you have to make all these decisions, and within these decisions there are reading of tells and reading of body language and posture and all of that stuff, and it felt like a very subtle way to convey information in a cool thing. Also, the music.
Yeah,
I think the music is
great.
awesome. I feel like it's a big temptation for a lot of people to do, chip tunes, beep beep bop boop beep bop. Boop.
Yeah, but it's not. It's
there's strings
grand,
and everything, and it's also interesting because the way that the game is played, you have to have everything perfectly loop and everything, and so I thought they did a really good job of making interesting dynamic music that can be played forever.
Yeah,
and each scene managed to sort of feel like possibly the end. It really, the music really helped heighten the sense of this is a dire event. And
it upped the urgency a lot.
Yeah. I think chapter 4, I want to say it's chapter 4's music is especially great. But you go from that to the desert scene, which has its own totally different sound, but is also giving you that great sense of you need to do this. You are in an emergency.
For me, it was I think the musical cue that I liked was actually near at the end of chapter 5, leading into 6. where you're the ship kind of just crashing through the scenes and stuff like that. Like I dug that music. I dug a lot of the music in general. A lot of this, even the sound design, I thought was interesting. Especially like I know it's silly to talk about a confirmation sound, but that whole like that kind of as you're going to the menus, that was such an interesting kind of sound choice.
There was an interesting immersive element, and it was most noticeable in chapter 3, where you're working on the cure. Is wherever you moused over, that's the loudest. Those sound effects would get louder.
Yeah.
So you would hear the digging, you would hear the electricity.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great way of taking sort of taking this type of art style and still making it feel like you are immersed and looking at this actual thing. There was a little touch, and it was really great.
Yeah, I thought that was really awesome.
I did too. Like I said, it was a pretty damn amazing game, and I think I'm gonna play it again because I want to see how the chapters work on original and the different ones. Just because, like, now that I know that this is like the chapter that was just like 3 different things controlling, that's what made me mad. I think if I pick a chapter that has a little bit less resources to manage, I think I could pull through it and sort of at least go through it.
Did you guys get a chance to listen to the alternate soundtrack?
Yeah.
I did not actually.
You go
I saw that.
You go back into the game, and on the escape menu, you can just change background, and it is equally great.
Yeah, totally. Some I think are better than the originals.
Really?
Yeah.
It's great that there's that extra layer of just like replayability and actually feeling like you're earning something.
Yeah, that was one thing I liked about it. That every time, at least the narrative you beat it, was like, here's an alternate soundtrack unlock in the gallery. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, because it makes me want to now go through and actually play the game and hear it. Now that I know sort of the motion is, anyways, you're going to be going through this. I mean, I'm curious as to what the other choices look like animation wise, and even hearing yours when you killed the guy, which is like everyone abandoned you. I was like, wow, that's kind of crazy they did that too.
Yeah, totally. And they have plenty of those unlocks. They have. I haven't unlocked a ton of stuff, but you get some concept art, and you get diaries from Sergeant Burden that he wrote that he doesn't remember writing because he wrote them in like past lives and stuff.
Oh, cool.
And so it really helps add to the backstory, and it's really interesting stuff. And I think some of those get unlocked by you running through and doing like very specific stuff, like not using the break room in the first chapter
or not having anybody die when you're watching. Yeah. I remember unlocking a couple of those things on
I'm about to look at
original Light, but that's really kind of an understated achievement to have in a game like this.
Well, because I tend to like when it comes to achievements, having something unlock with it, especially if it's extra features and extra kind of artwork. That always is. I'm a sucker for that and things like that.
Yeah.
Any other topic?
Nothing I can think of. Is there anything else you wanted to cover, sir?
No. I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah. No. That it is. I was glad that I played this game, and I know you would kind of. You're the one that sort of got me wise in the game originally because you saw a lot of the footage of it from other. I think it was Giant Bomb.
Giant Bomb played it a little bit. Rage Select played it a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean, I mean, when you mentioned Devolver was publishing, I was like, okay, well that already gives me a symbol of what kind of game, and in other words, what kind of quality of a game I'm about to play, because I really enjoyed the heck out of this.
Yeah, and it was on sale for like $5 for a while. And I missed that, but I wasn't even mad. I was like, I'll pay $10 for this. That's still like a great deal.
No, it is a great buy. I was really happy that I played the game.
And also Deconstruct Team like favorited my tweets and stuff.
Oh, really?
So I was like, yes. Active on social media. That's what's up.
That's how indie developers are, my friend.
So I guess it's time for last words or plugs, even. Because I think if we keep saying the game is awesome,
yeah, I think there's not much we can say. I think we've gone over everything there is about the game to go over.
Hopefully.
And I like I said, you've played it. If you listen to this whole discussion, if you cheated and didn't actually heard it without it being spoiled, still go play it. It's such a great game and so much fun.
Yeah.
So that's it. Brandt, where can people find you online these days?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, twitter.com/Gadwag, GATOWAG. Also, you can watch my playthrough of Gods Will Be Watching on No Clips. That's on the CosmicRadio.TV and our YouTube stuff, and I don't know, just you can find it.
Yep, of course. And of course, you can see more of Mr. Brandt Hughes here on the network on Cinematography with me, where we do commentary for movies, reactions, and the like. What about you, Bryce? Where can people find you, sir?
You can find me on Twitter at Brycas, BRYCAS. And you can find my music at neshcomplex.com, neshcomplex.com. Buy a shirt. Go buy a goddamn shirt.
Go buy Mercury Counter. Shirt's a great thing, but get the album because the album is amazing.
Sure.
Just wire Bryce some money.
Yeah,
just give him money.
I take PayPal at Neshcomp.
Who knows? Maybe there'll be a way you can help him out in the future.
Yeah, who knows? I don't know. And also, keep an ear out early December for Night Attack 3.
Yep.
Fingers crossed. I'm heading that, and it's going to be really funny.
Too old to talk.
Yeah, too old to talk. It'll be at nightattack.tv/album.
And of course, you can find me. I'm at Vincent404 on the Twitters. You want to comment on this podcast, maybe let us know what your experience was when it came to Gods We're Watching. Head on over to our website, CosmicRadio.TV/jump point. There you'll find links to show notes, previous episodes. Other discussions are, of course, Twitter account at JumpPointPod. So we watch and pay attention to and sort of talk about. And of course, you can join in, of course, at our, I keep saying of course, like it's a word, at our community site, which is community.cosmicradio.tv. We're starting to feel it out, get everything set up. Obviously, episode discussions will be there, but we're trying to work on other things in there as well, discussions outside of the gaming stuff.
If you go on Steam and you look up Jump Point, I don't know the fucking URL because Steam always has weird fucking URLs. But if you go on Steam and look up Jump Point, we have a Jump Point group where we do a curator's list of all the games that we talk about. And you can keep up and buy and find the links to our reviews. And hopefully, if/when we set up some sort of gaming community day, night, week, event, whatever, you will try to organize it through Steam through that. So look up Jump Point, you'll see the logo, and follow it.
There you go. So that's it for the day. So until next time, and as always,
Bring.
This has been a CosmicRadio.TV production. For more awesome shows, head on over to our website, CosmicRadio.TV.